despite all the left-wing opposition, the Republican Party in Congress held firm. The surge went forward, and it was successful. Now, the surge was not successful merely because it was an increase in troop strength. The key to the surge being successful was a very Republican idea, if you think about it. It was a counterinsurgency operation that understood that trying to build Lyndon Johnson's great society on the Iraqi people out of the Green Zone was not going to work any better there than it did than in the United States in the 1960s. That every society has traditional roots of order. They have families, they have neighborhoods, they have communities, and what you have to do is work from that level to build up to a sustainable government that represents its people. That is exactly what our brave men and women did. They executed the Thaddeus plan. The violence settled down. The media was so astonished they fell into a deafening silence about the fact of what we were accomplishing over there as a nation to help liberate the Iraqi people from both Saddam Hussein and terrorist elements within that nation. If you look at what we're doing in Afghanistan, we're trying to do the same thing. I want to make a clear point. This is not a new strategy to go to counterinsurgency in Afghanistan. This is the strategy the President announced in March that he wanted to go towards. What General McChrystal was tasked with doing was, how do I implement the President's counterinsurgency strategy? Now, we will hear things out of the White House that will say, this is a new strategy, we need to look at it, I need to fly to Copenhagen before I get down to it. The reality is that all this talk about a new strategy is not accurate. All the General has done is tell the President how best he believes to implement the President's announced counterinsurgency strategy. Now, if we go to a counterinsurgency strategy along the lines of what has happened in Iraq, I believe that while it will take longer due to the innate difficulties within Afghanistan, it will be successful. If the United States, under one guise or another, decides to leave Afghanistan without having helped to establish stability and sustainability within that country, what will happen is we will have enormous amounts of trouble with not only Afghanistan and the Taliban being revanchists, we'll have trouble with safe havens both in Afghanistan and within Pakistan for the terrorist elements that are already there. You will see those terrorist elements continue to try to destabilize the already nuclear Pakistani government. And we will continue to see our influence in the Middle East and South Central Asia diminished. And that will have terrible consequences for the American people. I think it's very important that this administration makes a fundamental decision. The General has said that we can win in Afghanistan. I think that this administration must commit to that goal and help the military commanders implement the strategy the President himself has announced. I think it is possible. I think it is doable. If it wasn't, I would not support it. I would encourage the President to do the same. So that's my view of that. And again, in terms of Iraq, all the gains in Iraq will be lost if we leave Afghanistan precipitously, because terror is mobile, is a transnational threat. And we have people who are very, very confident and capable that know what they're doing to try to destroy the United States. He says to keep speaking. 1, 2, 3. I'm just a little nervous with your hand there.
Ready for next one?
Congressman Pat Longo, RNC, Connecticut. I read on the internet yesterday that Harry Reid may be considering merging the two health care bills in the Senate with a public option, attaching that as an amendment to the House bill concerning executive bonuses, 51 votes. Comes back to you and probably pass the House and will go to delegates in the White House. My question is, will the Blue Dogs hold if it's attached as an amendment to the bonus bill?
Well, it's a very good question, but life is short, so I don't spend a lot of time trying to figure out what incompetent people are doing at any given moment, because they themselves don't know. So, all of this, from my perspective, is I have to wait for an answer. We all have to wait for an answer. As especially as Republicans, it is unpleasant that we will not be part of this decision-making process. The Democrats as a party have to decide what they're going to do. But Senator Reid, or the talk about Senator Reid attaching things, those are all procedural arguments. The attacks on Republicans for being the obstacles to health care reform, the smears against the public citizens who are peaceably assembling to petition their government for redress of grievances, these are all distractions. Internally, the Democratic Party has to decide what type of bill they can support that will get the votes to pass it, or whether they will work with the Republicans. Now, we went through this, as we all painfully remember. Remember when the Republican Party in the majority would start bills on the right of our party and try to count enough people without Democrats to pass it? It was very unpleasant to be a part of, and I'm sure it was unsightly to watch. And we tend to know what happened. Now, I like to think I'm bigger than to take a guilty pleasure in watching the Democrats repeat our mistakes, but I don't know that I can say that. They started in the House with a bill written by 3 millionaires from California to tell you how you're going to see your doctor. Waxman, George Miller, and Nancy Pelosi. Okay. So number one, I'm not sleeping much. No one has. It's already had an effect on my health. But what they tried to do in jamming this bill before July was they did not understand that their own moderate and centrist Democrats find this bill that they put forward so repugnant they will not vote for it. That's one of the unwritten stories. It is the Democrats that have stopped this bill from becoming law before the August break, before you could read it. Certainly before they would read it. Now, they have to decide what they're going to do. And when the President addressed a joint session of Congress, I, for one, forgot my rule, and I started to think, well, this is where we find out what the President will say as a chief elected officer. Will say, I need this, this, and this in the bill. No, he wasn't going to do that. Which means that he's left it in the legislative process. So not only do you have internal Democratic Party fights in the House, you have internal Democratic Party fights in the Senate, and yet he's talking about a tricky way to try to reconcile it. That won't work. It's not as if executive bonus is going to somehow fool the American people. Oh yeah, they also radically changed their healthcare system while they were at it. But this is a really good vote sticking it to Wall Street. That's not how this is going to work. The American people are focused on this like a laser. I suggested the Democratic Party do so. I suggested the President stop campaigning, start governing, make the unpleasant, unpopular decisions that are necessary to keep the process moving. And I would argue that the most important one he could do right now is say, the American people care more about the economy right now than they do about a radical change to their health care system. People want to work. What you should do, Mr. President, is work with the Republican Party to help grow this economy. What you should also do is put the reset button on health care for meaningful, affordable, targeted reforms to the system. And that's what the people want. Now, when they decide to do that, I think American people will be ready to work and have the parties work together. I will also have fainted, so I'm not that to happen anytime soon. But don't worry about the Republican Party. I just want you to remember this. People are saying, oh, are you guys going to capitulate? Are you gals going to have some deal? Fundamentally, with the proposals before us, there's a principal difference between the parties. The Democratic Party believes that they can have the government curtail the supply of health care to reduce costs. The Republican Party believes that through market forces we can increase competition, empower patients to serve as consumers, and that the market forces will help reduce the costs, increase the choices, and preserve and promote the quality. As I started with Michigan, our view is a 21st century view of this issue. A view of a globalized marketplace with communications revolution, empowered consumers, and individual control of their own decisions. Theirs is a 20th century model of statist centralized government that actually harkens back to the very bad writings of a petulant little Frenchman named Rousseau. It didn't work throughout the last 200 odd years. It's not going to work today for your health care. Next question over here.